The question is, what are the things that the Oklahoma Sooners need to do to be looked at for the college football playoffs? Well, of course, we're going to talk about them here. Next up, here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And once again, thank you for tuning in to Locked On Sooners every single day. Shout out to all our everydayers out there tuning in and subscribing. We are found on all platforms for podcasts as well as on YouTube. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and give us that, 5-star review and tell people how much you love us. And so, college football playoffs are tonight. Ohio State, Notre Dame, the battle for the Natty. And the question is, how does the Oklahoma Sooners find themselves in a situation where they can play in a title game or even play in the playoffs in general? Well, I have a few things that have to happen. Some of it requires luck. Another set of it requires for them to execute. But we talked about last segment how Paul Finebaum has Brent Venables on that hot seat. But he also mentioned before that he believes that Oklahoma will be much better in comparison to last year. And so to me, the way that this happens is, first off, you have to be undefeated going into Dallas. And that's what Paul Finebaum said earlier in the week, that you got to win those key games. That Michigan game is going to be important. And in order to win those games, the first thing you need to do for the Sooners to be successful going into the college football playoffs, they're going to have to have a competent offense. Lucky for them, they've got a quarterback that's put up 3,100 yards in passing and over 800 yards rushing and 44 touchdowns combined this past season. He put up the numbers that's needed, right? 29 passing touchdowns, 15 rushing touchdowns. John Mateer was able to go out there and be the one-man show for Washington State last year. So you bring him over with his offensive coordinator and Ben Arbuckle, pay him a truckload of money to build a creative offense that's going to be able to last and be sustainable in the SEC. The good thing for the Oklahoma Sooners is that a competent offense honestly adds 2 to 3 wins to their win total last season. You can argue with anybody out there, but you can't argue with me on this, because when I went through that schedule in those games, if you don't turn the ball over right after you get a turnover, you win some of the games that you were in. If your team doesn't just give the ball away instantaneously on multiple fumbles and hold on to the ball and not give up defensive touchdowns, you win a lot more games than you expect. Oklahoma looked really good in a lot of those games that you did not think they had a chance in. And then, of course, the big win against Alabama was basically a testament of what Oklahoma should have been this past season. It's a team that's super physical, a lot of physicality, as well as one that actually plays with care. That's the key thing. When Oklahoma did not turn the ball over or won the turnover battle, Oklahoma was undefeated. I think they're 6-0 or 7-0 in those games with underbrief Brent Venables. And so, if you win that turnover battle, think you're going to be fine with, moving forward this coming season. So the first thing is the competent offense has to be there. Next, to go with that competent offense, which you don't need to light up, is the SEC. The defenses are the most important thing. This defense has to maintain what it did last season, and I think it can. The good thing is having players like R. Mason Thomas, Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, and Dominic Williams making that valiant return with veteran presence of a Robert Spears Jennings in that secondary. Your defense looks really good going into next season. Now you need to bring up the young guys. You're going to need a Samuel Mosigo to show up. It's going to be about that time from him. Jaron Cannick, wherever he decides to play, there's rumors that he's going to be moving around on the field. And if he moves around on the field, he needs to be effective. But you also got young guys in David Stone, Jaden Jackson right there in the middle. You're still adding a Nigel Smith that's coming up with Danny Okoye. On the other side with PJ Abuare. Once he gets himself good and healthy, he could be another component. But what the Sooners are going to need to do is that defense is going to have to be nails. They have to be nails like they were last season in order for them to maintain successful and be able to have opportunity to play. That's going to be the thing that truly determines wins or losses next season, is how much of the defense does not break. Bending is okay. Breaking is not. And I think that this defense showed last season that they have a ways of not breaking in situations that they probably should have, and also show you that they can bend very well and be flexible. So if Oklahoma defense shows up, if Brent Venables defense with whomever he hires a defensive coordinator actually shows up, there's a chance the Sooners could actually do something even more special and more worthwhile. From there, though, after that, the next thing that's going to have to be important is there, outside of just having a competent offense, more details into that, the Sooners are going to have to really get the run game established. Last season, the run game was not all that great. It was okay, left a lot to be desired. But the good thing for the Sooners is, as of right now, they're returning just about all of the production in that running back room. Gavin Sawchuk is still here, Javonte Barnes, Xavier Robinson, as well as Taylor Tatum. So you got backs that have all shown us in a game, at least one game, that they're able to produce some numbers. You need them to continue to do that. So Gavin Sawchuk warmed up the season before at the end of the year with 5 straight games over 100 yards. You saw Xavier Robinson's game against Alabama where you're like, okay, he's probably the future. Taylor Tatum gave you some good stuff at the beginning of the season. You can't turn that ball over. And then Javonte Barnes gave you a few great hard runs throughout the entire year. That was all he did. He just ran hard. And that's what you're going to need out of him, as well as everybody else that is on the run game. Offensive line play is also going to be critical. Now, the good thing for Oklahoma is they're actually bringing back a bunch of veterans on the offensive line. Entire offensive line has so far returned of importance. Only person you lost is Gary and Hatchett. And then Branson Hickman should be, if I'm correct, he graduates, but there's a chance that he maybe have one more year left. So you've got a lot of guys on the offensive line that are veterans, and then you got some really good young pups, Isaiah Autry-Dent, Eddie Pierre-Louis, Daniel Akinkumi. You got some pretty solid ones there, Josh Isosa. You lost Eugene Brooks to the portal, but that's okay because you still got Heath Zaida, and you've got Febechi Wewu coming back, Logan Howland. So the list of those players are good, and then bringing in players like Ryan Fogier, as well as Michael Fasusi and Sean Hutton with Darius Afalava and Owen Hollenbeck. You've got yourself a nice stable on the offensive line that should be a lot better underneath Bill Beatonbow their second year. I think that Wewu is going to be one of your bigger surprises next season, as he'll give us similar to what we got out of McCade Matower, because McCade Matower's second season with Bill Beatonbow, he showed up and played a heck of a lot better. The last thing is that turnover. Last season, the Sooners finished the season at a 0 turnover margin. 21 given away, 21 taken. But they scored 4 defensive touchdowns. And so I think that Jaren Kanak one is considered technically a special teams touchdown, but nevertheless, Kip Lewis returning 2 interceptions for touchdowns, Billy Bowman returning a fumble for a touchdown, Jaren Kanak does it, R. Mason Thomas returns a fumble for a touchdown. You've got a lot of defensive plays that helped out in the season, and you're going to need a lot more of those. You're going to need to continue to make those defensive plays. So the sack game needs to continue to go up. You're going to need to continue to get the pressure on the quarterback, and you're also going to have to make sure that you're not giving the ball up as much as you are taking the ball away. Winning the turnover battle is probably the largest luck factor that you had to have on your side for a third season in a row in order to help yourself going into SEC play. If you're able to force them to turn the ball over, there's a really good chance that the Sooners are going to have opportunity to make something happen. And at Brent Venables' defense is built on not only hard hitting and physicality, but also forcing turnovers. They did a really good job. I mean, you saw it out of all of them. And then with the young corners out there who's starting to develop, I think Eli Bowen's going to be able to get himself another set of interceptions because people are going to doubt him and his capabilities. Robert Spears-Jennings is going to come out of nowhere and force more fumbles right there in the backfield. And I think him being a blitzer is going to be nice. You're also bringing back Kendall Dolby, which to me is probably one of the biggest pickups, biggest components of this roster management. And I think that's one thing that a lot of Sooner fans need to understand. That just because you didn't do a lot of, shopping in the transfer portal doesn't mean you didn't make a lot of moves. Retaining your own roster is just as big a deal as going after transfers. You don't want it to be a revolving door. You want to keep more guys in-house as possible because that chemistry and continuity is a lot bigger than it is if you're bringing in a bunch of transfers in and out. Believe me, a lot of these teams. Now, Ohio State went and grabbed himself a nice safety in Caleb Downs and, a couple other little components, but most of that team was built in-house, similar to Notre Dame. Their big thing was, just like Ohio State, they needed a quarterback to come in here and make it happen. And it appears that transfer quarterbacks from smaller schools who put up numbers appear to be the dude, or schools that, make changes at the coaching spot seems to be the thing that helps lead these teams to go further. I mean, Will Howard coming from Kansas State. I thought that he was going to, he could have won the job, but Avery Johnson was the future, so he moved on, did big things. Dillon Gabriel leaving us and going to Oregon, going undefeated in the regular season. You got that. Riley Leonard coming from Duke over to Notre Dame. Second straight transfer quarterback that Notre Dame's picked up after they picked up Sam Hartman. That's a big deal. Now it's the opportunity for John Mateer to do the exact same thing. So we'll see how that goes. Make sure you let us know what you all think in the comments below. And that'll do it here for Locked On Sooners. We appreciate you all tuning in with us every single day. For my guy, John, make sure you find us. We're everywhere. TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, if TikTok is still around. But Pinterest. John has got us on all kinds of places. But follow us on X. You can follow my partner, John, at John97. On X, you can follow me, Jay, at Unfair Sports. But for John, I am Jay. We will chop it up with you tomorrow. Boomer Sooner.